When my parents drained my college fund to bail out my reckless brother, they thought I'd just accept it. They thought I'd take out loans, struggle, and eventually come crawling back to them. What they never expected, that I would walk away, build a life without them, and become a millionaire while they lost everything. But the best part? When they finally came begging me for help, I gave them the exact same response they gave me. Figure it out. My name is Hailey, and for most of my life, I believed my parents loved me. Or at least, I believed they cared enough to treat me fairly. Looking back now, I don't know if I was just naive or if I had been ignoring the signs all along. Because if I had been paying attention, I would have seen it. My brother Dylan was always their favorite. He was the golden child, the one who could do no wrong, the one whose happiness mattered more than anything else. And me? I was just the afterthought. The younger sister who was supposed to be understanding, to be okay with getting less, to accept being second. And for the longest time, I did. Growing up, it was always Dylan first. If he wanted something, he got it. If I asked for something, it was a maybe or a we'll see. But Dylan? The answer was always yes. I never fought it because deep down I thought it didn't matter. I believed that when it came to something truly important, something that could change my future, my parents would do the right thing. I was wrong. For as long as I could remember, my parents had promised me that when the time came, I wouldn't have to worry about college. My grandparents had set up a college fund for me when I was little, and my parents always reassured me that it was safe. It's not a fortune, Dad had told me once, but it'll be enough to get you through school. So I never questioned it. I never checked how much was actually in the account. I never worried. Until the night I overheard a conversation that shattered everything. I was sitting at the dining table, sorting through my acceptance letters, trying to decide which college to choose. It was an exciting, nerve-wracking moment. The kind that makes you feel like your whole life is about to begin. My parents were in the kitchen, talking in hushed voices. At first, I wasn't paying attention, too focused on my laptop. But then I heard my brother's name. "It's completely gone," my mom said, her voice low. My dad sighed. "We had no choice. If we didn't pay, he could have been in serious trouble." I froze. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. My heartbeat pounded in my ears. "I know," my mom said, "and I want him to be okay. He deserves a second chance." There was a pause. Then my dad, quieter this time, "What about Hailey?" A cold chill ran down my spine. "She'll be fine," my mom said, her tone light, almost dismissive. "She can take out loans." My stomach dropped. My entire body went still. For a moment, I thought I had misheard. Maybe they were talking about something else. Maybe I was imagining things. But deep down, I knew. I turned in my seat, my breath shaky. "Loans?" My voice came out sharper than I intended. My parents both looked up, startled. My mom quickly put on a small smile, like she was trying to reassure a child. "Oh, sweetheart, don't worry about it." I pushed back my chair, standing up. "Don't worry about what?" My dad let out a heavy sigh. "Hailey, sit down." I didn't. I took a step closer, my pulse hammering in my ears. "What did you mean when you said I could take out loans?" They exchanged a look. The kind of look parents give each other when they're deciding how much they can get away with. Finally, my mom exhaled, like this was a conversation she really didn't want to have. We had to move some things around to help Dylan, to make sure everything was covered. I already knew the answer, but I asked anyway. "What things?" She hesitated again. Then, in the same casual tone someone might use to mention they had run out of milk, she said, "We used your college fund." My ears started ringing. I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. I looked at my dad, hoping, praying that he would say something, that he would tell me she was wrong. He didn't. Instead, he just sighed again, rubbing his temples like I was the one being difficult. "Hailey, don't overreact." I let out a short, bitter laugh. "You used my college fund to pay off Dylan's debt, and you think I'm overreacting?" My mom frowned, genuinely confused. "Well, yes, you can always take out loans, Hailey. College isn't going anywhere." I gripped the edge of the table, my hands shaking. "That money was supposed to be for my education. And you'll still get an education. she said, her voice patient, like she was explaining something simple to a child. Plenty of people take out student loans. It's normal. I felt like I was going to be sick. It was my money, I whispered. It was family money, Dad corrected. And we had to make a choice. A choice. A choice between my future and bailing out Dylan. Just then, Dylan walked into the kitchen. He stopped when he saw my expression, his eyes flicking between me and our parents. What's going on? I turned to look at him, and suddenly, the anger inside me had a direction. You knew, didn't you? I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. Dylan blinked. Knew what? That they used my college fund for you. He hesitated for just a second. Then he shrugged. Mom and Dad said it was fine. They said you'd be okay. My whole body went cold. I had always thought of Dylan as selfish, but I never thought he would be this selfish. You didn't even think to ask me? I whispered. Didn't think to see if I was okay with it? He frowned. Hailey, why are you making such a big deal out of this? I stared at him, then at my parents. And in that moment, I knew the truth. They had never seen me as an equal. I was never their priority. My future had never been as important as Dylan's comfort. I swallowed hard, trying to keep my voice steady. And you weren't even going to tell me? My dad rubbed his forehead, frustrated. We were going to sit you down and explain, Hailey. We just hadn't gotten around to it yet. I clenched my jaw. That was it. That was the moment something inside me snapped. Without another word, I turned, grabbed my bag, and walked out the door. I don't remember getting into my car. I don't remember turning the key in the ignition or backing out of the driveway. All I remember is the way my hands trembled on the steering wheel. The way my vision blurred as I tried to blink back the tears. I had always known Dylan was their favorite. But this? This was something else entirely. This was them telling me in no uncertain terms that his one mistake mattered more than my entire future. And that night, as I drove away, one thought kept repeating in my head. I am never coming back. I didn't go back home that night. I didn't know where I was going, I just drove. The streetlights blurred through my tears and my hands trembled on the steering wheel. My parents had stolen my future and didn't even think it was a big deal. My brother, the one they had sacrificed everything for, didn't care at all. And worst of all, they had planned to let me find out on my own. I pulled into an empty parking lot and just sat there, gripping the wheel, my breath shaky. For the first time in my life, I felt completely alone. I could have gone back. I could have screamed, begged, demanded they fix it. But what would be the point? They had made their choice. And now I had to make mine. I took out my phone and texted the one person I knew I could trust. Are you home? I need a place to crash. Within seconds, my best friend, Rachel, responded. Doors open. Whatever you need. That night, I curled up on her couch, staring at the ceiling, trying to process everything. The truth was painful, but it was also clear I was on my own. No safety net. No college fund. No support. Just me. And if I was going to make it, I had to start now. The next morning, reality hit hard. I had no money, no savings, no plan. I wasn't just losing my chance at college, I was losing my future. But if my parents thought I was going to roll over and accept it, they had underestimated me. I spent the next few days job hunting, taking anything I could find. I ended up working at a small coffee shop, early shifts, long hours, aching feet. The pay was terrible, but it was enough to cover rent for the tiny room I rented from a stranger off Craigslist. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't what I had planned. But it was mine. And while Dylan was back home, sitting comfortably in the house our parents had gifted him, I was working. Grinding. I refused to let this be my life forever. So every spare moment I had, I was learning. I stayed up late watching videos, reading articles, taking notes. I stumbled into the world of online business, side hustles, investing, things I had never paid attention to before. I started small. Selling handmade jewelry online. Reselling thrift store finds. Taking on freelance gigs. At first, I barely made anything, just a few extra dollars here and there. But I kept going. And then, one day, it happened. I made my first $500 profit. It wasn't life-changing, but it was proof. Proof that I didn't need my parents. Proof that I could build something on my own. Proof that I was capable of so much more than they had ever believed. From that moment on, I doubled down. I worked my shifts during the day, and at night, I poured everything into my business. I learned marketing, branding, customer service, things people paid thousands of dollars to study in college. The same college I was supposed to be in. Months passed. My online store took off. What started as a small side hustle turned into something real. Within 6 months, I had made more money than I ever thought possible. And the best part? I had done it all on my own. No handouts. No stolen savings. No parents telling me what I could or couldn't do. Just me, my determination, and a lesson they had never intended to teach me. I had learned how to survive without them. I had learned how to win. Before I share the next shocking twist in the story, the moment karma finally came knocking, I want to connect with you, my amazing viewers. Have you ever been underestimated by someone, only to prove them wrong? Drop a flexed biceps in the comments if you've ever fought to take control of your own future. And if you believe in rising above betrayal, hit that like button because trust me, things are about to get really interesting. A year passed and everything had changed. I was no longer the girl who had driven away from her childhood home in tears, feeling abandoned and lost. I was no longer the girl who had to scrape by on minimum wage, exhausted and defeated. I had built something for myself, something real. My online business had grown faster than I ever imagined. What started as a desperate attempt to make ends meet had turned into a 6-figure operation. My days of struggling were over. I moved into a modern apartment, furnished it exactly the way I wanted, and for the first time in my life, I had complete control over my own future. Meanwhile, my parents and Dylan weren't doing so well. It started with whispers from distant relatives. Things are tough for them right now. Dylan's in a bad spot again. Your parents are struggling. I ignored it. It wasn't my problem. Then, one afternoon, my phone rang. I glanced at the screen and saw a number I didn't recognize. Normally, I wouldn't answer, but something told me to pick up. Hello? There was a pause. Then, a voice I hadn't heard in over a year. Hailey? I knew that voice. I could picture the nervous smile on my mother's face, the way she always softened her tone when she needed something. I leaned back in my chair. Didn't expect to hear from you. A shaky chuckle. Well, sweetheart, it's been a while. How have you been? I let the silence stretch. We both knew she didn't call to check in on me. Fine, I said flatly. What do you want? Another pause. Then the sob story began. Things hadn't been easy since I left. Dylan had gotten himself into trouble again. He had taken out loans, made some bad investments, and was now drowning in debt. My parents, who had already drained every last penny to save him once, were now struggling to keep up with their own bills. We're in a tough spot, Hailey, my mother said, voice trembling just enough to sound sincere. And we were hoping you could help. Just a little to get us back on our feet. There it was. The moment I knew was coming. I almost laughed. After everything they had done, after they had stolen my future, dismissed my pain, and expected me to simply accept it, they had the audacity to come to me for help. I tapped my fingers against my desk, pretending to think. Let me get this straight, I said slowly. You stole my college fund. You told me to take out loans and figure it out. And now you're asking me for money. Hailey, it's not a... No, I cut her off. It is. That's exactly what happened. She let out a nervous chuckle as if trying to downplay the weight of it all. Sweetheart, we're your family. Families help each other. That word family felt foreign coming from her. I smiled, though she couldn't see it. You were my family when you took everything I had without even telling me. You were my family when you ignored me for a year. But now that you need something, suddenly we're family again. She hesitated. I could hear the shift in her tone, like she was realizing for the first time that this wasn't going to go the way she planned. Hailey, she tried again, firmer this time. We raised you. We took care of you for years. And now, when we need you, you're just going to turn your back on us. I exhaled slowly. There it was, the guilt trip. The expectation that I owed them something simply because they were my parents. But I didn't owe them anything. I leaned forward, keeping my voice calm. You told me that I could always take out loans, I said. That college wasn't going anywhere. So tell me, Mom, why don't you take out loans? Silence. I could almost hear the gears turning in her head, trying to come up with a response, trying to find some way to manipulate me into feeling sorry for them. That's not fair, she finally said, her voice sharp now. I smirked. Oh? Now you care about fairness? There was a sharp inhale, then a long pause. How dare you, she spat. After everything we've done for you. I hung up. For a long moment, I just sat there, staring at my phone. It should have felt good. The satisfaction of finally having the upper hand. The poetic justice of watching the people who betrayed me come crawling back, only to be turned away. But more than anything, I just felt free. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't hurt. I wasn't looking for revenge. I had simply moved on. And that, more than anything, was the real victory. Weeks passed and I didn't hear from them again. Not directly, at least. At first, it was just distant relatives reaching out, some pretending to check in, others not even bothering to hide the real reason they were calling. You know, Hailey, your parents are really struggling right now. Dylan isn't doing well. Maybe you could help. I ignored them. Then the messages started. My mother tried a softer approach, sending texts instead of calling. Hailey, we miss you. Let's talk. Then, no matter what, we'll always be your family. But when I didn't respond, the tone changed. I can't believe you're letting us suffer like this after everything we did for you. And finally, the last one. You're heartless. I didn't reply. Because here's the thing, there was a time when those words would have destroyed me. A time when I would have questioned if I really was a bad person for turning my back on them. But that time had passed. I had spent too many years being made to feel like I was worth less than my brother. I had spent too many nights wondering if I was selfish for wanting even a fraction of the love and support they had given him without hesitation. But I wasn't selfish. I was free. Another year passed, and life only got better. My business kept growing, beyond anything I had ever imagined. What once had been a desperate way to survive had turned into something bigger than I ever dreamed. I expanded, hired employees, built a brand that people trusted. I was no longer just making money, I was building something that would last. And as for my family, the pieces started to fall apart, one by one. Dylan never changed. He had been handed his second chance, just like every other chance before it, and he wasted it. He kept borrowing, kept spending, kept digging himself deeper into a hole he couldn't climb out of. Eventually, the people he owed money to stopped being patient. From what I heard, he lost his car first. Then the house my parents had practically gifted him. And my parents? They weren't doing much better. Without the savings they had drained for Dylan, without any backup plan, they started slipping financially. The house that had once been the center of their perfect little world, the house they had been so sure I'd come running back to, was eventually put up for sale. They had no choice. I thought that would be the end of it. That after everything, they would finally leave me alone. But one day, as I was finishing up some work at my apartment, there was a knock at the door. I frowned. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I checked the peephole, my stomach twisted. It was them. Both of my parents stood outside, looking tired, older than I remembered. And behind them, with his arms crossed and a deep scowl on his face, was Dylan. I took a slow breath, forcing my heartbeat to steady. I could have ignored them. I could have just walked away, let them stand outside, let them realize that I didn't owe them my time, my energy, or my forgiveness. But some part of me wanted to hear what they had to say. I unlocked the door and pulled it open just an inch. Enough to see them. Enough for them to see me. Hailey? My mother started, voice already thick with the emotion she wanted me to believe was real. We just wanted to talk. I raised an eyebrow. About what? She hesitated, glancing at my father. He cleared his throat and took a step forward. Things have been difficult. He stopped himself, sighing. We need help. I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. Is that so? My mother nodded quickly, clasping her hands together like she was in prayer. Just for a little while, sweetheart. Just until we get back on our feet. Dylan scoffed behind her. Oh, come on. We all know you have the money. I turned my attention to him. And what exactly do you think I owe you, Dylan? He rolled his eyes. You don't owe me anything. But it's not like you need all that cash sitting in your bank account. Jesus, Hailey, just be a decent person for once. I let out a slow breath, shaking my head. Some things never changed. I looked back at my parents. You told me not too long ago that I could take out loans. That struggling was normal. That I'd figure it out. I tilted my head slightly. So why don't you? My mother's face crumpled, like she had just been slapped. My father stiffened. Dylan swore under his breath. Hailey, my mother whispered, eyes pleading. Please. For a second, just a second, I felt something stir in my chest. A sliver of the girl I used to be, the one who wanted to believe that deep down, they loved me. But that girl was gone. I straightened, my voice steady. I figured it out. You can too. Then, without another word, I shut the door in their faces. I stood there for a long time, listening as they knocked again, listening as my mother's voice wavered, as my father muttered something under his breath, as Dylan stormed away in frustration. And then, finally, they left. I never heard from them again. Maybe that should have hurt. Maybe I should have felt something other than peace as I turned away from the door and walked back into the life I had built with my own hands. But I didn't, because for the first time in my life, I had finally learned the most important lesson of all. Family isn't about blood. It's about who shows up. And when I needed them, they didn't. So now, neither did I. The biggest lesson from this story: you don't owe loyalty to those who betray you. Family isn't just about blood. It's about who shows up when you need them. If someone only values you when they need something, they were never truly there for you to begin with. Choosing yourself isn't selfish, and walking away from toxic people isn't cruel. It's necessary. Now, I want to hear from you. If you liked this story, comment number 2 below. If you didn't, comment number 7. All opinions are welcome. And if this message resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe to Mr. HeartVibes for more powerful stories. See you in the next one.